Superintendent Cowart to lead us in the invocation and pledge.
Please stand with me, please. Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, we come to you thankful to be here in Levy County. We're thankful for the blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. Lord, we lift up those that are here tonight. We ask that you give us guidance and wisdom, and that as we deliberate for the betterment of our students and our staff, that you'll be here with us. Lord, we thank you for the blessing of being in Levy County. We thank you for the blessing of all the hard work that goes on during the summertime to prepare for the next school year. And we ask all these things in your name we pray. Amen. You'll address the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Item C, the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additional corrections?
Mr. Chairman.
If not, I entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. We'd like to welcome everybody. It's good to see a crowd here tonight. This is time for public comment. So if you have something you'd like to address the board, this would be the time to do it, so now.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Come on. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Come introduce yourself and try to generally keep it in a time frame and germane to
You can get the shot collar.
All right.
Let me a little background on myself. My name is Richard Rogers. I started my police career in 1973-4 in Miami-Dade. 1993, I moved up here and was employed by the Levy County Sheriff's Department until July of 2020, where I retired. My concern, or the reason I'm before the school board today, is I would like to offer my expertise in regards to law enforcement to the school board during school hours. I did a little bit of research in regards to who's available, who would be willing to come in, and there's a lot of retired law enforcement people, firefighters, and additional service-oriented people, military and whatnot, that live within the county that are more than willing to volunteer their time to the school and for the safety of our children. I know it's a difficult subject in regards to the school board and how law enforcement works and who's allowed and who can't. I don't know those inner workings, but I have done some research, and hopefully that we can come up with some solution that we can include our civilians, our county people, and citizens here. I'd be more than willing to work 8-hour shifts or school shifts or whatever as a point of contact and or at a school. I've been to every school in the county, and none of them are secure when it comes to safety-wise in regards to how to get in and how to get out. I know that there is some protocols in active shooter, stuff like that. If you were to look at all the shootings that have taken place throughout our country, it's a matter of time, response time for law enforcement to get in there to do something. Even though we have armed SROs at every school, they can only be at one location in the campus. And my thoughts, in order to harden these areas of concern, would put in layers of security that takes these people time to get to our schools, our classrooms. And that could be as simple as additional fencing. It could be berms. It could be choke points where they can only come in one or two places. And I'm pretty impressed right here with the high school. There's two places that you can drive that you have control over. And that's where the buses come in and the driveway where the students get dropped off. There's two places that they have to come through in order to get to the school. And then there's a pretty good distance between those gates to the school itself for the security end of it. I think that would be one of the better parts, is to controlling these areas that have access the general public can get to. You know, and I've checked at all these gates, you know, an aluminum gate I can pull apart by myself at some of these schools. And all it would take is a bump of a car and you're in. We've got chain link fences that are wrapped with aluminum wire, and it's nothing to get into. If a person wants to get in, what we need to do is put a time barrier from where they get in to how they get into our schools. And my only concerns at this point, or whatever we can do as a citizen to help the school board. And I know it's a fine line. We cannot depend on the sheriff department. I'm not here to say anything. They can't keep people, personnel, and it's a reactionary time. That's my concerns here, and that's why I'm before the school board in anything that I can do. That's it.
Mr. Rogers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
very
thank
much,
you
Mr.
very
Rogers.
much.
Thank you for your time. Any other public comment? We do appreciate you sharing. Yes, sir. A bunch. Item E, Yankeetown School Recognition. Superintendent.
Mr. Masters, so Mr. Joe Wayne, could y'all come forward? As you all know, on March 30th, tragedy befell us in the south end of the county. And that next board meeting, I vividly remember coming to you and sharing with you just being on site and kind of flash back to an even more horrific situation back in 1987 that we all know about just down from here. So, but today we have an opportunity to celebrate some people that went above and beyond, and people that the training that these two men do and put in, the training that goes on with our school admin day every summer during this time. So it was like clockwork. That training went right into action. And I think that goes hand in hand with what Mr. Rogers talked about, the safety and security of our kids. And there's a reason why that's the first thing, the first line of our mission statement in Levy County. And so today, got the opportunity, so this is from Mr. Joe Wayne. So Mr. Joe Wayne nominated Impact Award says, Miss Mary Nicholson has a perfect attendance record. She complies with state rules, policies, and all safety procedures. She strives for the perfection and often asks if she can perform her job better. Ms. Nicholson has built trust and rapport with her students and their parents over years. She is exacting when it comes to the bus rules and student safety. I've witnessed her teach students right from wrong and to use their manners. She often hugs them. She addresses all of her students by name and treats them with the utmost respect. On March 30th, 2022, Ms. Nicholson gave all she had to comfort the students in Yankeetown. She followed every policy and safety procedure. She told me that she needed to see her students and know that they would be okay, and she was on the bus the very next morning. She has shown her students strength. Ms. Nicholson has been exemplary as a school bus driver and has made a huge contribution to the success of the transportation department. Miss Mary, would you come up, please? So. This lady right here is the epitome of what it means to love our kids. She's also the epitome of somebody who will speak out. That's a little bit of a joke. Y'all get that?
Yes, she is.
It's true. So, and I love her dearly. So, and she loves our kids. Thank you very, very much. So. Also that day, vividly remember, so Mr. Gore comes in and says, did you get the text message? Did you get a phone call? We were in your meeting as a lead team. I said, no, and he said, there's been a bus accident. And I'm pretty sure, Max, so if you would have clocked me, so I might have got a ticket so that day. So because I'm pretty certain, so the gray car has never gone as fast as it went with Adam and I down there. But when I got there, this is what I saw. So I saw Miss Mary there. I saw Miss Westfall. Miss Westfall, would you come forward? Our principal, who was on the scene in a matter of minutes, along with Miss Mary, directing everything, comforting parents, comforting students, making sure everything was flowing just the way it should with their procedures. So, Ms. Westfall, thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Westfall wasn't the only one, so, and there's several here. So, the next person that I saw there is Miss Sandy Watson. So, Miss Sandy, our reading coach. So, I don't even know how these people got there, but they were on the scene there. So, they could be seen. So, Miss Sandy, would you come forward? So, there they were, whether it was holding somebody's hand, whether it was giving them a hug, whether it was just a kind word. So, Miss Sandy, thank you. Miss Candy. So, we have our principal there, we have our reading coach there, and we have our school counselor there, trying to provide all of the support that we need. So, and what's great about Miss Sandy and Miss Candy is both of them, so, there's my rhyme, so, is the fact that they're Yankeetown, true and true, and they've gone to that school, and I'm sure appreciative. Thank you, Miss Candy. Miss Ruth here. Miss Ruth. So Miss Ruth and Miss Francie. Miss Francie, come on forward. So between having somebody back, coordinating, making phone calls, checking on parents, alerting them know, because whenever you have a tragedy and anything goes on like that, so the hardest thing is just the not knowing and being able to communicate. And so Miss Francie, and Miss Ruth did an excellent job. Miss Francie has also been a great liaison with our families through this process, so thank you. Why don't we come forward here and we'll get a picture so for Miss Marla. So come right here. So Mr. Masters, Mr. Go. So anything that you guys would like to follow up with, so.
Well, I'd just like to mention that Miss Laura McBride was also there, but I'm able to be here tonight.
So.
We feel bad she's on a cruise.
I don't feel so bad. So she's enjoying it. D, I'm going to give you Miss Ruth's certificate, so we'll have Miss McBride's report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank each and every one of you. It's what makes Levy County special.
Amen.
When something like this happens and we have the leaders who do step up, it makes comforting for parents to know that we have people that care, for sure. Item F, Mr. Morgan Bennett, Mr. Gary Masters, transportation software package.
I'll start us off, then
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should give it.
That usually occurs a lot.
Over the past few years, we've considered a need for a new technology system to serve the needs of our transportation riders. We've done quite a lot of research, and the system that seems to fit our needs best is called Traverso. Several of the districts within NEFAC are already using Traverso and have been for some time. It's highly recommended. We had a lot of our staff together as we were investigating this and looking at the way it works and the benefits that it would offer to us. So if you think about how we came to the recognition of this need and how we began to move forward with it, if you look at parent communication, a large number of the calls we receive in our department involve bus location and timing and whether or not a particular student is on the bus that day or not. And so with this system, there are group possibility and individual possibilities to correspond with the driver and the parent. The driver would call in on the radio, dispatch can contact the parent through text. Obviously the driver can't text or call, but we can patch from the radio to the parent to keep the parent in the loop. Substitute drivers, we know that we're in a nationwide shortage of drivers. We've been blessed that our district has been able to for the most part, make every route and every trip. We've struggled at different times, but our subs are in short supply, and we try to have every sub trained for any route that may come up. But if we get a call out at 3 in the morning, and it happens to be a route that a particular sub driver is not familiar with, this system has a tablet, and that tablet gives verbal, audible, turn-by-turn directions. It also has the map there, but the tablet fades out at 5 miles an hour. Obviously, you don't want to be trying to watch a map and go down the road, so it gives turn-by-turn directions verbally, and as the driver rolls up to the stop, if it's a sub-driver, all of the names and pictures of the students at that stop come up. And so as they get on, they would scan themselves onto the bus. At the time they scan themselves onto the bus, a text can be sent to the parent saying your child is safely on the bus, the same when they would exit. So if a student attempts to board the bus, but it's not a student who is assigned to that bus, the tablet flashes red and indicates this is not a student that's on your route. We have had a time or two that a student was trying to get to school, but they weren't supposed to be at school. Maybe they were suspended and they had an ulterior motive or something they wanted to settle. So it's good, even for a sub-driver, to be able to be alerted. This student is not supposed to be getting on your bus. So that's good information. One of the other things is routing improvements. You can take a list of students, upload it into the system. It automatically builds a route for that bus based on the criteria we give it. We're always going to want the student to board and exit to the right side of the road if at all possible, and the system would plan the route that way. So we've been discussing emergency response, and there's all kinds of benefits this would play. In the case of an emergency, you have right there at your fingertips all of the information on all of the students, and you know immediately who is on the bus, who is not on the bus. And so that can be printed off then and provided for anyone needing that data at the scene. State reporting accuracy, you know that our funds come through a 11-day survey window. That would be tracked automatically. Every student getting on and off the bus is logged in. We know they were in attendance and did ride the bus that day, so our state reporting won't have any glitches, and the driver won't be distracted while they're trying to pick up 10 kids trying to check the roll to account for those students. Thankfully, we're past the point where we're requiring contact tracing, but I think we know it could return. Nonetheless, every bus has an assigned seating chart, and this system would track where each student was sitting on the bus. So if there were a problem for contact tracing, for example, we could tell exactly where that student sat and who would need to be alerted that they might have been exposed. And finally, payroll accuracy, right on the pad. The driver takes the pad, goes around the bus doing the pre-trip and the post-trip, but they also click a button and sign on for the day on that tablet, and that logs their time for payroll. So we have a short video coming up that demonstrates these things I've discussed and other components. And while you're watching that, you might be thinking about how this system could benefit sub-drivers, payroll, parents, state reporting, and emergency responders. I'll relinquish the pulpit to Mr.
How
Bennett.
can you enhance safety, improve communication, increase efficiency, and provide oversight of your operation? One solution does all this. Tyler Drive. It's one-of-a-kind software loaded onto a unique, semi-rugged tablet, which is mounted on a school bus near the driver. Fully integrated with Tyler Student Transportation software, Tyler Drive provides turn-by-turn directions to each scheduled stop, manages student ridership, records pre- and post-trip vehicle inspections, and electronically logs employee hours. First, your transportation team develops routes for your district using your Tyler Student Transportation solution, Traversa or VersaTrans, designating the safest, most efficient way for your students to be picked up and dropped off each day. When a driver logs into a Tyler Drive unit, their assigned route is uploaded using the exact route and stops you build. Tyler Drive provides the driver with route-specific directions to each stop, following district policy and safety guidelines. It can provide visual directions or audio only, with the screen blacked out while the bus is in motion. These electronic directions are significantly safer for drivers and riders compared to paper route sheets, as they allow the driver to keep both hands on the wheel and both eyes on the road. They also make it faster and easier to onboard new drivers or teach sub-drivers a new route. At each stop, Tyler Drive shows the names and photos of the students who are assigned to board or leave the bus at this location. As students enter or leave the vehicle, they scan a radio frequency identification card, or RFID, over the Tyler Drive card reader. This creates a record of when and where the students scanned. The driver is also alerted to students attempting to board the wrong bus or exit at unassigned locations. As each student scans their card, their parent or guardian receives an alert on a secure integrated mobile app. Tyler Drive has an internal GPS, allowing you to manage vehicle location in real time, or track and trace the vehicle location, speed, and heading of the vehicle at earlier points in time. Before and after each run, the drivers can undock Tyler Drive and take it with them as they perform the pre- and post-trip vehicle inspections. Tyler Drive provides a customizable checklist and can require a signature from the bus driver to help ensure a thorough inspection. Tyler Drive also manages employee timekeeping. Staff, including drivers, aides, and mechanics, can clock in or out on the tablet so that they don't have to go to the depot to punch in. With Tyler Drive, you can enhance the safety of your students, improve communication, increase efficiency, and provide oversight over.
So in the upper left-hand corner, that is a picture of one of the tablets that they referenced in the video that would be on each of our buses, and they are portable. There's a mount and then the separate device, so we can move devices around as buses come in and out of service. One of the things that I kind of wanted to mention, and Mr. Masters referenced this, is that this is kind of the culmination in this product that you see here before you of a fairly extensive bit of research that we've done with him and his team. Some of the other systems that we looked at were Versatrans, which is another product by Tyler Technologies, Samsara, Here Comes the Bus. So there's quite a few different products out there, but when you looked at that set of needs that we started with, this was pretty much far and away the system that checked the most boxes of the things that we felt that we were needing in terms of upgrades for our transportation system. So I'm going to pause there. The next thing I want to talk about in just a moment is the student ID cards. But before we get into the student ID cards, I wanted to see if there were any questions about the Tyler Drive system and what you saw in the video.
Mr. Chairman. How would the schools individually handle bus notes? Just from being up front and answering the phones, you get the bus notes in the morning from the children that they're changing. So one of the things we really liked about this system is that it has something called role-based security. And so depending on what your role in the transportation process is, you can have different access to this system, which is web-based. You can log into it from any web-based device, not just these tablets. And so theoretically, you could have individuals assign a duty at the school to process those notes in the Tyler Drive system. And also, you know, if the school is receiving calls, that then gives the school the opportunity to see in real time, like who's on the bus, yes, Johnny did get on the bus, no, Johnny did not get on the bus, based on whatever role it is that we need to develop and assign to those school staff members. And each student, I know you're going to talk about cards, but each student carries their own card at all times?
Yes, ma'am. And one of the things that I'm going to mention and emphasize again when we talk to that, in fact, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We can be talking about what we're looking at. This is an example of what a card layout, a generic card layout would look like. One of the things that I really want to emphasize with any kind of a card system is that it's not replacing any of the systems that we currently have for students to check on or off. All those different kinds of things are still going to be there. It's just an additional tool that we can use to help speed things up and make things more efficient. Because as we all know, we want to get kids on the bus and to the school, off the bus, and or you know what I mean, or to home. So those are some of the considerations we have.
What about lost cards?
Lost cards, each school is part of this package. Just to kind of, let me back up and maybe talk about this, and then we can talk about that. So in the layout that you see here, this is just an example generic card, but it'll have several components. First, it's an RFID card. That's basically near field technology. So a student that's a bus rider would be able to just kind of hold their card in front of the little pad on the bus, and that checks them on or off the bus. So that's the RFID part. But if you notice underneath the picture of the student there's a barcode. That barcode could, for example, be a student's PIN number. And one of the things that our research has shown us about looking at something like student ID cards is that the more useful you can make them, the more ways you can make it a tool for the school process, the easier it is for people to adopt it, because students need to find that it's useful, staff need to find that it's useful. So if you look at that barcode that has a PIN number, one of the applications that we know we are wanting to move forward with for that particular aspect of the card would be to integrate it so they could scan in the cafeterias for lunch. So that could then become a way for them to expedite lunchroom lines, get lunches, get breakfast. We've been in consultation with Ms. Oberst on that, and she's very much on board with that. They could still use their pins, they could still be checked in manually, but that would be an option. With that particular aspect of the card, we're also looking at some other different types of integrations that we would like to do, including perhaps things like using it to check books and items in and out of the library, using it to check in and out Chromebooks, for example. So anything that needed to have a check-in, check-out process could use that particular aspect of the card. On the left-hand side, you see the QR code, and that's actually a clever QR code. So one of the things that brought us to want to include that on the card is with logging into Clever requires the student to type in their login and password. But in particular for our younger students, sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge because they're still learning literacy. So you can also, on any of our district Chromebooks, you can scan, they can hold up that QR code in front of the computer and that logs them in. So that speeds up and makes it easier for teachers to get their students on and using all the different applications that we have in the Clever dashboard. So you can kind of see what we're looking at here is something that's multifunctional. We are interested in trying to integrate as many things as we can with it. This would be a system that every student in the district would get a card, whether they're a bus rider or not, because as you see, it's multifunctional. The bulk of the students in our system once a year would, this company that we would be contracting with for this, they would print the cards for us in bulk once a year. And then after that bulk distribution, any students that later enrolled or anything like that, each school would have a system whereby they could generate a card. Same thing if you have a student that lost a card and needed a replacement. These cost about $2 or $3 each, so it's a minimal replacement cost if someone lost something. So that's kind of the aspect of the student ID card.
And in the case they just didn't have a card, the driver can enter them into the system, or they can enter themselves with a PIN number. Correct.
Thank you very much.
What about training time for our
Good question.
drivers?
So this, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is a very tentative implementation timeline, and Mr. Geary and I have talked a lot about this. We feel very strongly that the best velocity for a project of this size that has a lot of different components to it, hardware, software, training, you need to go slow to go fast. And so you kind of have laid out there the planning for all that, but to directly answer your question, Ms. Brickens, part of this package is some extensive training by the company. I believe from my past experience that one of the best ways to do training is to start small, get it right with a small group, expand out from there, work with the people that are interested in it and are very committed to it, like what it does, and get them trained up so they can then help you support everybody else as they come on board. So that's the philosophy that we're looking at for this. It would really, this next school year is going to be an implementation year. It's going to take us pretty much most all of the year to implement these different components, to get everything installed, to get cards generated, to get practice. So this is not something that's coming to a school year near you on August 10th of this coming up school year. It's something that we're going to be gradually implementing piece by piece over this year, if you so approve. And then 23, 24 would be our target year to really be fully implemented and rolling full steam ahead with this whole system. So one of the other things that we have that I think is I'm really excited about is here recently we actually had a staff member that added to us that are kind of shared between our two departments. Her name is Emily Joyner, and she's responsible for the transportation state reporting for the district now. But one of the nice things about Emily was she has some extensive experience in computer tech. She has been a computer tech for Northeast Florida Educational Consortium. So she has experience in all this. She's excited about doing an implementation like this. So she will be helping to support this project on our end to make sure that there's someone there that can be a single point of contact for questions that arise for the different aspects of this. So that's something that we're pretty excited about in this. So any other questions about the system, the cards, implementation timeline?
So if this is year one, with the total contract price and was a phase in, so how long a contract are we looking at, and is the cost escalation?
It's a 3-year term, and that's part of the negotiated cost. So if you want to go to the next slide. If we were in normal times, it would be challenging for a district like us to look at a package of this size, because most of the cost of a system like this is out of the starting gate, buying the equipment, doing the training, which we know is going to be extensive. And so one of the things that Mr. Masters mentioned was that this, among many of the other uses that it has for us, is it's going to allow for much better seating charts and contact tracing, and because of that, This is an eligible and was a funded item under the American Rescue Plan. And so this 3-year contract is, the vast majority of the costs that you see there will be covered, including all of that year 1 startup cost under the American Rescue Plan. So when you look at costs to the district that would be recurring, they're listed there under the last bullet. Those would be including things like data plan renewals, because the tablets have a built-in cellular data connection. And so those recurring data plans, recurring costs of a new batch of card printing each year, and then any replacement hardware as hardware fails eventually. These are pretty rugged tablets, so based on what I've seen and heard, I'm not anticipating extensive damage to the tablets, but they should hold up fairly well. Most Chromebooks with this type of case do, but there will inevitably be a few that we have to look at replacing. So really the year 3 and beyond costs is what would be recurring to the district. I think that after 2 full years of implementation, I think we would have a really good idea of whether this is a winning system for us, whether we need to look at one, but perhaps not both aspects of it. I hesitate to say that after 1 year we'll have enough information, because the first time you do something for real, you always make a lot of learning points and learn changes that you need to make. So that's part of the reason. The other is the negotiated cost. So, any other questions?
Based on this figure here, just so I'm understanding it correctly and on what Mr. Etheridge asked, this amount here would be out of the ESSER funds.
ARP.
American Rescue Plan. And then this is for 3 years. So all of this would be covered for that first 3 years? Or, I mean, estimate-wise, how much would we, if we wanted to stay with it in the 23-24 school year?
So we would be under contract for 23-24, and the recurring cost to the district for that year, I'm sorry, not 23-24, 24-25, the last of the 3 years.
Okay.
The recurring cost for that year would be somewhere in the neighborhood, if I'm doing my math correctly, of $10,000 for that 1 year. And then we would enter into another contract after that. Now, that is with the RFID cards. That's assuming the board chooses to pass the whole package, which is what I would recommend. That's kind of a rough estimate, because in truth, the American Rescue Plan's funds end in September of 2024. So there's actually 2 to 3 months in the fiscal year of 24-25 that we probably could get coverage for, and it would only be the balance of that school year that we've started that those recurring costs would be a district cost. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. It does. Thank you.
What is the total cost? Is it in here?
It's in the contract packages that the board has.
What would that cost be?
The total cost,
I'm trying to get to it, sir, I'm sorry.
so for year 1, everything all together, and this is part of the American Rescue Plan now, it's funded as part of the federal grant, that would be approximately $186,000. And then the recurring costs for year 2 and 3 would be less. I'm looking at about, and again, the vast majority, all of year 2 and some of a portion of year 3 would be under the American Rescue Plan as well, and that you're talking somewhere around 40 to 50 for each of those years. But the vast majority, remember, is in the setup, the buying the equipment and all of that. So this is really a situation where the grant is allowing us to do something that normally we would not be able to do, because that would be a challenging budget for the district to face, and looking at that all together as a package.
We would have loved to have been able to do this previously, but it just was not possible.
This was also appealing, but we do post audits FTE codes on, if you do certain things that we're letting us know that through data entry errors and human errors, we're not capitalizing on all of our funding that we should. So this is another mechanism that, as Morgan, myself, and Mr. Masters talked about it, that we're hoping in year 3 you'll start to see some recovery of those recurring costs through your transportation costs and some other areas that we kind of felt like there was redundancies and overheads that needed to be addressed.
So as an example of that, when you're looking at the funding that we receive through transportation, yes, sir.
I don't have a copy of $186,600.
I don't either.
That was, well, that's
I got
because-
$32,000 on a CI
That's because
solution.
there's 2 separate contracts.
Okay.
And you have to add the 2 together, so that number is looking at the 2 added together.
Okay. Okay.
So I can show you the spreadsheet that that's based on.
Okay.
To go back to the example that she said, so when we report transportation for funding, for the state funding that we can get for transportation, that's currently based on attendance rosters that bus drivers keep on paper. Now, put yourself in the place of, in particular, a sub-driver who's driving that bus during an attendance window, and you have someone come on the bus, you're not familiar with the bus or the kids, and so you have to take down their name. So when they write down their name, that's forcing the bus driver to try to figure out what this child's name is. And then when they do that and say that that child was in attendance and rode the bus, someone then has to go and hunt and try to figure out who that child actually was based on the name that they wrote down. Whereas with a system like this, you're scanning on, you have pictures, it's much clearer for the average person that's running the bus who's actually on the bus and who we can get funding for, because most of the challenges that we have in terms of state reporting come with trying to figure out who this student whose name they took their best guess at spelling that's written in is that rode the bus. And sometimes we can't find them because we don't know, we can't get close enough with the name to figure out who that kid is to say, yep, that's the kid we need to report, because that's the kid that rode the bus. This system eliminates that problem to a great degree.
Under normal circumstances, you would just have a sub once in a while, but during COVID, of course, we had drivers in the hospital for days and even weeks, so it was an issue, yeah.
And I think Ms. Lake and I have talked about this previously, but these ARP funds were restricted on what we can spend the money on.
Yes, ma'am, you are
So-
correct. There are subtitles that had to be spelled out, so with that.
And this was one of the areas that the grant was specifically designed to address, dealing with things related to COVID contact tracing. And those seating charts that are part of this system, that address that. And I will tell you, if Kaylee Wade were here, she would be very willing to tell you that the challenges she had during the pandemic trying to do contact tracing on the buses, it was extreme at times.
I can imagine.
So if we can go to the next slide.
Back to exhibit.
So it seems like a wonderful program and everything you've saying, and I agree with it all. But just so that I'm clear, that the ARP is going to pay for this for the 3 years, except the 24, 25, and the amount that we would have is around 10,000. Is that correct?
That is my best estimate. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
And that would be.
And then after that, we would be out from under contract. If we decided that we didn't want any of this, then we could revisit that. And there are exit clauses, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
that there may be some costs
All
associated
right,
with
thank
that.
you.
So if you look at it towards the end of part of Exit A, you see the breakdown.
Yeah.
I don't have exact page number, but about page 10 into.
So the CI Solutions is basically the software.
Yes, ma'am. So what you actually have before you in your packets is you have 2 contracts. One is with Tyler Technologies, that's the larger of the 2 packets.
Right.
And that's the one that's for the busing system, for the hardware, for the training, for the online process, all of that. And then the CI Solutions contract is, they're basically a subcontractor that Tyler works with, and they're the ones that will do the student ID cards. So it's a separate, slightly smaller contract. And we could, at the end of this, we could decide that one of them's working really well for us and the other's not. We may choose to keep one and not the other. So in a way, I'm kind of glad that it's two separate contracts, because these are both, in certain ways, their own separate big projects that have different advantages and disadvantages. So, you know, at the end of the 3 years, we have some options.
And they both have that same initial timeline?
Yes, ma'am,
Three.
both 3
It's-
years.
Both of them are the same.
How many actual buses do we have on route right now?
We have 50 routes.
Okay, so we fit under the 60.
More buses than that.
Right. The stand and the wiring would go on some of the spares, and then the tablet would just be transferred. And if a spare bus was used, after the second stop, the system recognizes, hey, this is not the normal route for this bus, and it converts to the actual route.
Just a couple other quick things I want to mention. This is the newer product of the Tyler Technologies company. Their legacy product is called Versatrans, and Versatrans is a product that 2 or 3 other districts in the Northeast Florida Educational Consortium have been using for many years. They're just kind of like us and Skyward, because Skyward has a newer product as well. They're happy with what they have. They've been using it for years, working with the company for years. They just weren't ready to make that jump yet because of some of those investment costs of getting the system like what we have in this package. So it's a company that when we brought Northeast Florida Educational Consortium folks into the loop in relation to state reporting, they're very familiar with the company. They immediately saw it and were comfortable with what they saw in terms of state reporting. The other thing I would mention is that it is a nationwide company. They recently signed a contract, and they're in the process now of onboarding every district in South Carolina. So the entire state of South Carolina is with this company. So I do have a confidence that this is not a fly-by-night operation in either case. There's quite a few people out there, including in Florida.
Just one more dumb question. I'm sure it's internet-based, so in our rural area where it's not, we don't have access to internet, does this operate? How does it work?
Yep, that's a great question. We asked a lot of questions about that because we had some of the same concerns. And so basically what those tablets do is they're constantly looking for a data connection signal. And when they go into an area that it's not, they store the data locally on the tablet, and as soon as they can reconnect again, they automatically ship up the data that they've stored. So just like if you were on your cell phone, if you go into a dead zone, it's still going to be collecting any data that it needs to locally, and then when it can get back to a signal, it's going to send that up. So nothing is lost. It's just sometimes a delay. I think where we would see that more than anything else is in some of the messaging and real-time features of where the bus is. Like if you had a bus that was way out in the woods, it may not be exactly accurate where that is if there's not a cell phone signal, but eventually it would true up in terms of what happened.
It should bridge our lapses in our radio signal, Azania, Camp Azania, down at Yankeetown, and on the south end of Williston. We struggle to reach a driver, and this will give us another way to reach them if the radio signal is weak.
Right, because going back to the role-based security, one of the things that it can do is it can, like if someone in dispatch is needing to send a message out to one or specific groups of drivers, they can do that through the tablet. And so they can get messaging, obviously not when they're driving, but they can get messaging through the tablet as well. So they have a little bit of built-in redundancy with their existing system.
Do you know if they have any plans or if they have it in the software, a panic button? I mean, if something happened to the bus driver, that the kid, anybody would see a panic button? Do they have that?
I do believe that they have it available. It's not part of this package.
What he's referring to is there are additional pieces of hardware that are not part of this package that if we end up liking this, we could look at other packages down the future. They have things that can give a lot of additional, almost black box like information for buses that are in emergency situations. In terms of like lockdown type of scenarios, I don't remember specifically asking that question. So we would have to get.
When we first looked at it a year ago, that was mentioned. It's not part of our package.
Okay, thank you.
Is this cell phone tower based?
It works on cellular data plans. Yes, sir.
And if these different companies come in, is it automatically upgrade to those? Because
Well, all companies,
Terrible. No matter whatever street.
right, the contract allows for the Tyler to adjust cellular data plans to meet the best needs possible of what's out there for the district. So there's options within the contract for them to do that.
So, on the CI Solutions, this $32,000 one, is that per year or is that the whole 3 years at one time?
What was the first number you gave me?
The CI Solutions sheet you gave us? Total price $32,445.
I believe that's a 3-year contract.
That's 3
So
years.
that's looking at the costs of 3 years worth of their recurring costs.
Okay.
Does
And
that make sense?
so essentially the first year we're looking at like 180 grand
Yeah.
based on these things. Yeah, a little bit more than that. But then it drops off to 26, 27
Correct.
per year. And those first 3 years are AR funds.
The first two and
2.5.
portion of the
Two
third.
and
Two and a
through
little bit.
September
that
30.
we can still cover under
Cover under that, and then it falls on us.
ARP has a hard deadline where your expenditures have to be done.
And then, in looking at this, it does not look expensive to maintain
It
once
is
we're
not.
in there.
It's
the
much-
getting in there.
Correct. It's much more cost effective to maintain than it is to implement. And you see that in particular in the Tyler contract, because that's where you're getting all of the devices,
All that
the
stuff.
hardware, all the install.
How long do they expect the hardware to hold up?
I asked that specific question and they said typically 5 to 6 years.
Okay. Okay.
And that sounds about right to me.
And then at that time, we may, who knows, 5, 6 years.
Correct.
Okay. Cool.
So,
Money always worries me, but I see lots of benefits to this, Mr.
yes, sir. And
Mr.
that's-
Morgan and Mr. Gary. I
Yes,
see
sir.
these as just pretty good, cool stuff.
So, if that concludes any questions that the board has, what we'd ask for is we would need 2 motions. We would need a motion to approve the contract with Tyler Technologies, and then a second motion to approve the contract with CI Solutions, because they are separate contracts.
Got one more question, but not 3. What do you think, Ms. Lake, monetarily? What do you
I'm
think?
all for it. I was excited. This is something Mr. Masters has wanted, and I even paid for it myself, but we knew we couldn't afford it. So when ARP and Essers fell in our lap, it was the perfect time to implement something that's relatively low in recurring costs that I think we will recover just in data entry errors and some payroll redundancies that are occurring over time.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like nothing pays for itself in education, but it sounds like this borderline pays for itself.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We lose money on everything, but this sounds
Well,
like it's
just,
not bad.
just as an example, again, of that kind of a thing, going back to those route sheets that we use to claim funding, just to give you an idea of the level of scrutiny those are under in an audit, if you, as a driver, make a mistake when you sign, if you make a mistake on the date, an auditor can and will very easily void 100% of the FTE for that particular route. So anything we can do to support drivers whose obvious primary responsibility is keeping our kids safe, I'm all for that. Because, you know,
I also like the fact that when little Johnny gets on the bus, we know he's on the bus. When he
Yes,
gets
sir.
off the bus, we know he's off. We took care of that baby for that mom and dad.
yes, that's very useful, especially at the beginnings of the year.
I would remind you, if you maybe remember back to February, where we had a situation where we had about an hour and 45 minutes where we had a 3rd grader who was found on property but not where, and mother was very concerned and worried that didn't get dropped off. So even though that driver, we had very good records and had the ability. So those things, I think that's a great thing. So, and I'm going to expound on. So we did go through our audit, and so we signed it and assigned the kid on the first day of the survey window. That was not good enough. It needed to be on the last day, and so we did lose FTE because of that. Because that's how much the auditor scrutinized, even though it does not state that. So
again, you need 2 motions, one to approve the one contract.
One for Tyler.
So I move to approve the Tyler contract.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Tyler contract. Is there any discussion? Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
I also move to approve the CI Solutions contract.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the CI Solutions contract. Is there any further discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you for your work.
I will leave this with you all. This isn't, it's a blank, but this is an example of an RFID card if you want to look at it.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, two things. So I neglected, should have recognized a couple other people with our bus incident. So Mr. Joe Wayne and Mr. Gary, along with Ethan Bray, one of our mechanics, were all en route and they're on the scene. So, and truly did a wonderful job. Just really, really appreciate them. So they didn't get certificates of appreciation.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
but their efforts don't go unnoticed. So appreciate both of them. So.
Jared Hauser and Marcus Glover are also.
They showed up too. So.
All right. Thank you. Good presentation.
Was.
We'll be moving on to item G. It's a 2022-23 Student Code of Conduct. Mr. Locke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we've come to that time of year again when we need to adjust and edit our Student Code of Conduct. These things, we need to get them approved tonight, basically to get them into the printers. So we'll have them printed, so the first day of school the kids will have the Student Code of Conduct in their hand. They can sign that they have received that, so if there's a violation, they don't have an excuse when they come to the board. So we really need to get it approved tonight. Just to remind you, the majority of the changes that come each year to the board come from the actual schools. It's their ideas to change the Student Code of Conduct based on the changes they see in the behaviors of their students. Every year the students change. Every year the technology changes. Every year society changes. And as those changes occur, the issues that they're seeing at the school change likewise. So we get input from the schools. Then we bring those proposed changes to the principals in an administrative meeting. We discuss them. Some things are very easy to reach consensus on. Some things are not. But there's a process where we do vet these ideas and get their approval at the school level first. So this obviously is not the entire Student Code of Conduct. These are just highlighting some of the changes, and obviously the first page is the changes in the years. On page 15, you'll see some changes that were proposed to the extracurricular policies that we have there. One of the things that we were seeing were some students who were enrolled in private school or home education schools who weren't really our students, but they were still participating with our sports teams or possibly some other clubs like FFA and so forth. We just want to be sure that we close any loophole so that they were clear that they also fall under the same Student Code of Conduct rules that every other student falls under. So that's that first one there. And then the second one there, we saw a loophole where some kids who, for example, were in our focus placement, so alternative placement, and they would withdraw and leave and go to enroll in a private school and then want to come back and participate in extracurriculars. And we didn't allow it, but we had nothing in policy to formally say, no, you can't do that. So that's closing up that loophole there, that second bullet there. On the very bottom of page 15, you see the change there. Instead of activities, it basically says that a student who receives ISS may not participate in extracurricular competition and not necessarily activities. So what that means is that a student who is in ISS for the day could still participate in a practice, but not a competition. And again, this was brought to us as a request from the schools. On page 23, we realized that we used to have fighting as one of our infractions, but we changed it because they changed some of the sister qualifications. What we considered a fight didn't really match up real well with what sister considered to be a fight. We found out through the year that this past year that we really needed something that really aligned itself, our definition and their definition, and that it really is what you see there is the definition of a fight. We have some other codes that we can use if it's a minor, but this is a fight. So this would a fight, you know, by their definition would be when they're going at it and people have to grab them and pull them apart. That would fall into this category. If I see an altercation occurring and I walk up to the altercation and say, you got to stop, knock it off, and they do it without me having to actually physically get in there, then that's not considered a fight under this definition. But one of the schools said we really need to put something in there to formalize that, and so that's why that's in there. The rest of that's just changing in some of the lettering and the formatting. On page 45, it says that the superintendent designee may also place the expulsion in advance pending the re-enrollment of the student in the district. There's very few situations where this would apply, but we have in the past done this, but again, we don't have it formally in writing and we want to put it in front of you. Let me give you an example of when that might occur. You have an elementary age student who, you know, under our policy 5.11, which says a kid who receives 15 days of OSS in a semester or 20 in a year, they shall be considered for expulsion. So this is a kid who has, you know, a lot of infractions and referrals, which has led to a lot of OSS. A situation like that, an elementary age kid, you know, do we bring him before the board? That kid, at that point, they decided that they're going to leave and go somewhere else. And we say, well, okay, but if you come back, we may go forward with that expulsion. So this basically puts the expulsion process on hold. They've gone somewhere else. It may be another school. It may be home education or what have you. But it gives some flexibility in certain situations, mainly elementary age kids and also students who may fall under that 5.11 policy. On page 52, you'll see some changes there, and this is a work in progress. This is a work in progress, and it will be corrected. And on 53, I believe that those numbers have been corrected to reflect the new district numbers, which was changed this year. And you should have a corrected hard version in your hands.
Your program and then your home.
On page 54, just a few changes corrected some of the programs that we have available. Some were added and some were deleted. And on 55, we made an attempt. The previous version we heard was confusing. This is basically in this case, it's an opt-out for a parent who doesn't want their student's photograph to be taken, who doesn't want their photograph to be put on Facebook or publicized under school activities. This gives them a chance to opt out of that. And also there's another section there in regard to directory information. So those are the two areas that the parent can opt out. If they return this, then none of that will be published or disclosed to anyone. Some of that basic information in the directory, for example, sometimes it's used for articles that may be in the press. It could be to our photographer who's trying to do some things in regard to the school yearbook, those sort of things. So. And then at the bottom, it's just basically, this is the affirmation that they have received the student code of conduct. The reason we went for the opt-out because it would be you probably could do this easier, but many times we give the student code of conduct to students and we do not get anything back from the parents. So basically this says, well, you didn't give us anything back, so therefore we assumed based on that it was okay for us to put your kid winning this award in the paper or so forth. So that's all the changes. I know that's a lot, and but does anyone have any questions in regard to the changes? And I do want to thank some of our school administrators that were here tonight, because this benefits them. So we had asked them, if at all possible, to attend, and so I want to thank them for being here as well.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Lott, on this notice, the last page, page 55, this is in the booklet, or is it going to be handed to them separately?
It's in the booklet. It's normally towards it's like the last page in the booklet, so they sign it, tear it out, and bring it back.
Okay. Because I remember something like this in their enrollment packets as well. A permission slip to be videoed and so forth. Is that still, so that's still separate? So it's not the one in the same then, that gets in their enrollment packet?
We have a separate one in ours that they sign in the form.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking, are they going to go to this? What's going to make them go to this last page in the student code of conduct book so that we
Well,
get it back?
we just tell them, that it's on the last page, and this is what this is, and if you don't want your your parent doesn't want you to be photographed or anything released to the media, then this is where they need to sign. And the same thing with directory. And we always tell them that we would like for you to return that last part of that so that we can affirm that you have received the student code of conduct.
So I have to give them another notification then to look at this?
Well, when we send the code of conduct,
right,
the teachers indicate that we want that back page returned, and it's just a lot of white space that says I have read and understand.
Right.
And they send that back. We collect it first period, and I'm thinking what he's talking about is on the other side of that, somewhere close to that.
It's all on one page in the last of the book. This.
We give them incentives to get it back, like I know we give them like a voucher for something on Friday, we try, and then we have a list and we go back and start getting the kids that were missing, so.
And my second comment would be on page 15. I've already spoken to Mr. Coward a little bit about this and just going over it again in my head. I guess input from, the admin that's here as well would be great. When I look at in-school suspension, based on the teachers and that this county has, I think that they don't take ISS lightly. So someone has to do something to get ISS to begin with. And I know in the past they were not allowed to go to practice. So, I look at putting competition there to activities, I look at it as though we're kind of taking a little bit of a step backward and not holding the students accountable for what they did by allowing them to go to practice. And I know I'm a little old school, but I remember playing sports, and if we were to get in trouble, we would have to go to practice, but we weren't allowed to participate in practice. And, that kind of holds you accountable when your whole team is looking at you going, thanks for messing up because you left us a player down.
Right.
So I just don't want to be taking a step back, and I just want some input and.
I understand that. As a former coach, I looked at it as an opportunity for me to give them some extra conditioning, like gassers and suicides and flagpoles. So depending on the sport, that's a whole nother opportunity to get better and to learn from your mistakes. So,
I see Max shaking his head.
I would say Mr. Slimp probably has some input since I believe that Williston championed it.
Yeah, I had a little change of heart about this because in observing what was going on, we were losing kids with that. Like, they
How
weren't,
do you mean?
like, they weren't going to practice, and, you know, things were extending beyond. And I feel like a lot of these kids, the coaches, you know, we're communicating with the coaches, and we need to do a good job as administrators communicating with the coaches, and that there should be some additional, you know, additional consequences for them being in ISS, but that we're not turning those kids loose after school to just, you know, kind of do whatever, that they're still, they're going to practice, and they're going to receive some extra consequences, and it's not going to be fun, but, you know, we know where they're at, and the coach can have an opportunity to mentor that kid and, you know, get them back on track, so to speak. I think the fact that they can't compete, you know, because a game is still going to be that deterrent. I just, you know, a lot of kids get practice anyway, so, you know, so it's just kind of like, you know, the mindset of the coach and the team and the expectations for those athletes. I think as administrators, we've got to be cognizant of, you know, if those coaches aren't having those high expectations for those kids, for those student athletes, and having those discussions with the coach. But a lot of times, just a consequence from the coach goes a lot further than a school consequence. A lot of times, you know, some of these kids, we're trying to turn them around. Being in ISS, it's not a big deal, you know, to a lot of them. So, but them not being able to participate and them having a consequence at, you know, practice, a lot of times carries a little more weight.
I would just hope that this, you know, I know some students, they just kind of act out to get ISS. And not all, just some. But if they act out, get ISS, but know that they're still going to go to practice, I want them to have accountability, so they're not just acting out in class, being disrespectful, and still knowing that they get to show up for practice.
Ms. Boyle, I feel extremely confident that we have admin in place and coaches in place that have brought this, that if we have a student that wants to act out and goes to ISS, that we may have 1 or 2 times that happens, but I believe by the second time that happens, that student will either A, have worked that situation out that they will no longer be a part of that program, or B, they will be on the straight and narrow to doing what they're supposed to do. And as I communicated to you today, in the way that it's written now, student gets ISS, they miss practice, so that's really the second punishment that they've gotten. And a lot of coaches, myself included, if you miss practice, you're not playing in the game. So now that's 3 times that they've been punished. So if we take a look at it and it's a problem, you know, our admin, they put a lot of work in this. They're bringing it to you all, and it is your code of conduct that you help enforce. But I can assure you that the mindset is not to take a step back from discipline. The mindset is to help us.
No, I don't disrespect their work at all. It's just, it's my mindset, my opinion of it.
Yes, ma'am. So, Cheryl, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's sometimes that we can not defer ISS, but not get to that point when we can say, all right, one more time in the hallway and I'm calling the coach. I'm stepping in his classroom, I'm going to let him know. And so sometimes it doesn't even make it to ISS by being able to let the coach know. So I just wanted to echo what Josh said about the communication to the coaches is sometimes really helpful, but we don't even get to ISS.
Thank you.
I had a couple things. On page 55, and I don't know if this is possible, and I don't even know if it'll fit, and I'm not no expert on that. And it may be the fact that I'm 3/4 blind. But to me, when we get to the bottom here where it says by not returning this form and all that, and then it jumps to student code of conduct, receipt acknowledgement, just the way it all flows together, and I think that's why some people aren't returning it. Maybe we need to scoot that student code of conduct, receipt acknowledgement make it bigger, put it centered in there to where it's drawing your eye to say, this needs to be signed and returned. This is separate, or maybe even those little star lines, this is separate.
Or maybe a separate page.
Something. That way it draws your attention that, yes, this is the part you sign and turn it back in that you have read this. Has nothing to do with whether I can use your kid's picture. This is saying, homie, you read it, we have it on file, I can do that. Because we have an attorney here, but how many times have we heard, nah, I ain't got that thing, I ain't seen it, and we're talking to a 13-year-old. They ain't got it, they ain't seen it, they probably took it to mom. But when it's on a separate sheet and it's very blatantly obvious, I wouldn't mind sending that paper home a couple times going, we didn't get it, we didn't get it. Maybe it's because I'm in the insurance business and we have to get signatures constantly.
I think sometimes, at least I used to make my teachers, there's a whole nother form where basically they sign. You got it, sign, right there in class.
Yeah.
So then I don't rely on them to return it. I still have backup proof. Yeah, they got it here. They got it on the second day of school or first day of school. They signed for it right here. So I don't know if you guys still do something to that along those lines. You do?
In my line of work, I have to, like we have, going to sign it online? Yeah, I'll sign it online. Well, I have to have that in 30 days. We ain't got it. Well, I'm sending you another one. If you don't do it then, come see me. If you hadn't done it then, well, we're going to put it on there, and now you'll call me because it costs you more money. This won't cost anybody more money, but I'm saying, make it very obvious. My other thing is, I'm like Miss Boyle, and I told Mr. Coward I would not, last year I was beating everybody up about having activities instead of competition. I get what y'all are saying. I absolutely get it. I view the word extracurricular as just what it is. It's extra. You are a leader at your school if you're participating in these things, so you need to be on your best behavior. As I told the superintendent earlier when we were talking about it, I ain't gonna fight you on it. I'll go along with competition. As long as I know that we're not conveniently, Johnny's not getting ISS today because we got to play Chiefland tonight and we need him. So we're going to put that off till Monday. And there's not a case of, I can act the fool all week. It's game day. As long as for lack of a better term, if we're going to put this bulldog out there, I want him to have some teeth and I want you to do it. And I say that with all sincerity. I got calls from parents all over this county. Hey, these football players, these basketball players, we're letting them get away with everything on game day because they won't get to play. I don't want to hear that call. I want to hear that, hey, we expect this in Levy County. This is what we are getting. I do not care if you're the 5-star super athlete that's already signed a contract to go play for Alabama. You messed up today. You ain't playing tonight in the biggest game of the year. Absolutely, accountability. Because here's the other way I look at it. The other ways I look at this, extracurricular activities. We seem to keep talking about athletes, but it also involves band kids. It involves FFA kids. It involves all these. But we keep talking about athletes. Football players got 10 games. FFA competition, they got tons of competition. So to me, I worry about it not being a fair correlation. We do have a competitive cheer team, one, but the bulk of cheerleaders, are they competing? No. They're at the game. So, it runs that way. Basketball players, they got more games than football players. So it's the fairness of the thing. That's why I was big on the activity. If you can't behave yourself, you lose the right to go do that extra thing. I don't have a problem with a coach doing it, but I'm tired of hearing coaches say, I'm going to make him pay. I'm going to run him a little bit more. Mr. Lott's an old school coach. Thoroughly believe Mr. Lott is going to make that happen if he was coaching. Mr. Lott ain't coaching no more. Got all kind of new coaches, new guys. I expect, we have principals here. I expect y'all to make your guys do that. And if y'all can give me your word we're going to actually do it, I'm cool with it. But to me, it's an equitable thing because of different competitions. It's a case of, like I said before, if the bulldog ain't going to bite, what's the point of doing it? So I expect it to be done. That's my stand on it. I won't fight you on it, but that's how I feel about it. It may be absolutely 100% wrong in your eyes, but as a parent sitting back, having gotten these calls as a school board member, when last year it was activities, having been the parent of a kid playing ball, and sit there. Well, he was in ISS today. When last year was activities, he was ISS today. But I see him out here. Oh, we had the FFA roundup today. That kid was in ISS today. He's out here participating hard. We didn't do it last year, so if we're going to put it down, let's do it. And that's what I told the superintendent. That's where I stand on it. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think that we have looked at it both ways, and we have. And I believe in what the administrator said, that they know their coaches. They know what these coaches and the FFA teachers and what they have a really good relationship with these students, and I respect that, and I like what they can get out of them and they can get out of the students. So a competition being out is, I would think, would be an embarrassing thing after they have practice and they've been there with the teachers. And I understand exactly what you're saying, and it does happen, but at some point I'm putting the faith of the administrators that change this and want to go back, because they're with our kids and they know. So I'm in favor of the competition and leaving it this way in our code of conduct.
Maybe I'm looking at it, and I didn't agree with this when we voted on it the first time, but it's hard for me to imagine that we would, if a kid goes to ISS, other than their parents, the most responsible person there too is either their advisor or their coach, other than the classroom teacher. And they've had a problem with that classroom teacher to get ISS. So we would logically say we're going to make it where you can't go be responsible to that ag teacher or coach after school today. Now we're going to take the competition away from them if they have that. We probably have the harshest on OSS in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
You basically lose it for a month. So I can't imagine my child getting in trouble at school today who plays football, baseball, or FFA, but their coach not being able to help discipline that in the afternoon to help with the process of it. I couldn't imagine. I mean, so they have to wait till day after tomorrow, I guess, when they're back out of it, for them to get the discipline that day. I mean, it doesn't, any chain of discipline always, where that I've been is at the point of discipline. So we discipline at ISS the minute it happens, correct? Mm-hmm. Right. We don't wait 2 days later after the action to do it, do we? And I've watched time and time firsthand. I mean, I watched a scenario just the other day where a mother said the child could not come to practice that day because he was being rude. The coach called the parent and said, if you'll send him to practice to me this afternoon, I can promise you that it will happen again. So, I mean, there's no doubt within the county that we're in right now that the level of professionalism and these extracurriculars is probably as good as it's been in a long time across the county. So I do think things can change, but I could not imagine, I will not vote that we say you're not to go to the person that you would be second most responsible to continue your discipline for the day. And our kids with extracurricular activities receive multiple punishments, where our students who do not compete receive one. You have a student who does no extracurricular activities, they get ISS and it's over. Today's, before we do this, they don't get to participate, and if it happens to be on a Friday, they don't get to participate in the contest. But if they do that, they only have to show up to practice for the discipline that they're going to receive afterwards. No, in our days, we would have had it ISS, coach, and mother and father when we got home. Today, in the world we have in today, unfortunately, if the coach is not doing it, all they got is ISS, because there's no accountability beyond that. So that's my take on it. I think it's another layer of accountability for our extracurricular students. Any more discussion on those pages?
I was
Yes.
going to say, I think too, back to what Mr. Aswell said, I think sometimes when kids did show up at these events, I know at Williston, when I was there, and I have my school, I don't know if y'all do yours, but we did spreadsheets. So as soon as, our deans would discipline a child, it went up on the sheet. The coach had access to that through our drive. So that made, more accountability of it. And then of course, we've driven over if we heard a kid was Josh, I think there were many times we've driven over because we heard they were on the field and they weren't supposed to be. So I think that communication is the big piece sometimes that gets missed. And if we have that laid out, and I know we used a daily spreadsheet, discipline that only certain people had access to, and they knew those kids could do this or not do that.
And that's exactly what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
as I
punish the kid 3
communicated-
times. I'm saying do what we say we're going to do.
Right.
Yes, sir. I believe we have the people in place to enact that, so, and that's why I feel confident in this change.
Good deal.
And please don't get me wrong, it's not my opinion that I don't respect the admin and coming forward for the change. That's not what I was saying.
Again, I think the thing here, to put it very simply, is we'd rather have them running laps than running the streets. I mean,
And I'm cool with that.
so
I'm cool with that.
that's kind of where we're at. And, here's the other thing. We do this every year. If it doesn't work, we see it's not working, next year we change it however you want to change it. So if there's no other discussion, we would ask for approval.
Any further?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the student code of conduct revisions for 2022-23. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, Mr. Lott, item H.
All right, we have several policies, and I'm going to tell you right now that this is a lot of policies, and I was in touch with our NEFAC's point person in regard to changing legislation and what that might mean for future policies, and he said that we will probably have this many come the end of July. So we wanted to go ahead and get a batch out, and in the process, we introduce it, we come back for any other questions, and then we ask for approval. So that's kind of why we wanted to get the ball rolling on these particular policies. Now, in general, when we bring these policies to you, at least lately, almost every one of them is because of changes in legislation. The first couple here, particularly the first one that's before you, 2.21, respect and civility in schools and district offices. That's coming to you because of a change in society. And it's unfortunate it changes society, but we, again, vetted this with our school administrators. All of these have been vetted. We went through every one of them with school administration. And even though this policy is not dictated by a change in legislation, every one of them felt like it was necessary, unfortunately, in today's world and what they deal with at the school level. Just a lack of civility. This policy is pretty comprehensive. You read through it, you can talk about it talks about abusive language and even abusive language on the phone. I mean, leaving a voice message where every other word is a cuss word. Those are the kind of things that a lot of our administrators, I answer the phone here a lot. I can tell you it happens to me here. So, we just felt like there was a need to formally put something in place in board policy. A lot of this stuff in here we already do. It's just not written down. Like if we have a problem with a parent at a ball game or somewhere else that's off campus, or if they come up at the end of school, and they're out of line, we do call for law enforcement backup. We do ask them to leave. We do tell them that if they do not, we will ask for a trespass order to be issued. And our law enforcement SROs and others do a very good job of supporting us for that. So that's basically what the first one is. I don't know what would be best. Do you want me to do these one at a time and see if there are questions, or do you want me to go through the whole thing? Because there are a lot. Keep going? Okay.
And so these are the first time that we're introducing this, is that correct? And we're not voting on these, we're introducing?
We're just introducing them.
It would be
We're
to
gonna
request
ask-
to advertise.
We're going to ask for permission to
Right.
advertise. They have to go through that whole process. But
Right.
these will come back for you at the next meeting. You'll have a chance to digest them a little fuller. And if you have other questions as we do this, we can answer them or change them. This is, again, these are your policies. 3.25, again, recording of parent-staff meetings. We, as technology has changed and, smartphones have become as common as water, we see this more and more in our meetings where people think it's their right to come into a meeting, a private meeting, pull out their phone and just start recording whatever goes on in the meeting. And so this policy basically formalizes some procedures. There are times when it's necessary, and particularly maybe in an IEP situation where it is needed to formally document something that's occurring in a meeting. This policy outlines some exceptions, but basically it outlines when it is acceptable to record meetings. Our next policy is 4.141, wellness policy. You see this every year. It's a state requirement. This comes before the board and is open for public comment every year. It's a statutory requirement. There are no changes in the actual policy other than the dates for this year. And I wanted to point out that that second one that we talked about, the recording, that's not required by a change in statute either. That's just something that the school administrators felt like we needed to have. 5.15, administration of medication. This is a new requirement due to statutory requirements. The Parents' Bill of Rights. In fact, there will be about 4 of these changes. There are about 4 of these policies that are due. The changes due to that new legislation, the Parents' Bill of Rights. Now, we looked at this, and actually, and I want to say this, this is also a team effort. I take these policies, I look at them, I say, you know what? This one, for example, this one needs to go to Kaylee Wade, because she's sort of that health point for us. She looks at medications and she looks at risk and how that applies to medication. So, I farm these out to different people. Some might go to Dr. Hall because they're ESC. Some may go to Mr. Gore because they're safety and security. And then they all bring them back and we compile them and then we bring them to you. So this one went to Ms. Wade. She looked over this our current policy. She basically thought it best just to scrap what we had. And so you see that's why that's crossed out. And then the new one is in red, which follows. So administration of medication. This is a brand new model policy that came to us from NEFAC to address the requirements of the Parents' Bill of Rights.
In conjunction, she also had some consultation with Angie Phillips, so from Department of Health.
Okay, 5.39, this is one that went to Dr. Hall, seclusion and restraining students with disabilities in public schools. And this one is actually, this change or changes came as a result of changes in law, ESSA requirements. So this was, again, that's a federal law, but these changes in this policy is because of ESSA. .41, this one also went to Ms. Wade and revised that policy, our policy based, the statutory number, by the way, for the Parents' Bill of Rights is 1014.06. And we didn't have a specific policy previously that was just on student illness. Some of that was captured within the pupil progression plan and other places. So this is a brand new policy. It's one that we didn't have before. Some districts did, we didn't. And so it's there before you because of the Parents' Bill of Rights and changes that came about because of that legislation. 5.42, school health services, along the same line. We do have a current policy 5.28, which is similar, and it deals with contagious diseases, and this is just a supplement to that, really. But it's 5.42, school health services. A lot of this stuff came out of the Parents' Bill of Rights, but some of that was because of COVID and the effect that COVID had on our systems. 7.18 came out of finance. This is a model policy. I gave it to Ms. Lake, and she looked over it, and she felt like because of some changes that has occurred, in the last few years in our schools in regard to fundraising, and that we needed to change some of our policy in regard to those fundraising projects, in particular things like GoFundMe is becoming a popular way to raise funds for classroom teachers. They buy things with those funds for their classes. And this sort of just outlines, okay, so you bought something, does it belong to the teacher, does it belong to the school? And it sort of clarifies that. One of the things that we also get every year, that we're blessed to have a very robust schools foundation. And one of the things that teachers always write are, they call them NICE grants. So I write a NICE grant, I give it to the foundation, they reward me with whatever it is I requested. Does that belong to me now, because I wrote the grant, or does it belong to the school? This clarifies some of those questions. 7.26, electronic records, signatures, and fund transfers. This is a clarification of language and use, and again, this is a result of new technology and changes in how we sign contracts. I can't remember, I don't remember how many times I've signed a contract, honestly, through electronically now. It's becoming very commonplace, and we didn't have any policy really that said this is okay to do. But a lot of our vendors, they don't send you a paper document and say, hey, here's the contract, sign it, and send it back to us anymore. It's all done through DocuSign or some other electronic signature program. So that's what this is about. And it also addresses electronic fund transfers. Ms. Lake, I don't know how many electronic fund transfers we do, but they all come across my desk. I see all of them, and it's credit, debit here, back and forth. It happens all the time. So they just address that concern as well. 8.21, electronic systems, responsible use. This one I gave to our MIS department, in particular Mr. Bennett. And so he went through this. This is not required by statute, but it was a request by them. I gave it to him, do you think this is a good idea? Yes. And it really aligns policy with our responsible use agreements, which all of our students sign, all of our employees sign, and even our parents and volunteers sign. So in fact, that's included towards the end of that policy is the actual responsible use agreement for visitors, students, and staff. And that's it. Do you have any questions now for me, or possibly for any of the people in the audience who are the real experts on this stuff?
Anybody have a question on the first reading? And I think there's a recommendation for request to advertise.
I just have one quick question.
Okay.
It's just going back to an earlier situation with a student, and the 5.441, is all of this from the parent bill, or is this kind of added to the previous one that was from the parent bill and legislation?
Student illness?
Yes, sir.
This is the model policy as written. This came from NEFAC. Again, we have a policy in regard to things like contagious diseases and stuff.
Yes, sir.
We did not have one called student illness. Other districts did. I gave that whole section to Ms. Wade, and she then gave them back to us to bring to you. So I don't know the answer to your question. Is what I'm saying.
Well, if possible, if Ms. Wade could get together with yourself and other, maybe Angie Phillips, my thought process is the unfortunate circumstance that happened to one of our students that was ill and went home. If there could be something in policy to whereas if you can't reach the parent after a certain time frame, and if the student is not getting better in the eyes of whoever is in the school's health room, that at that time the local EMS can be called and say, hey, you know, we've been trying to reach the parents for 3 hours. Just something to where
I believe that is their protocol, but Counselor?
We're always authorized to act, certainly in an emergency situation. And if there's an ongoing health concern for 3 hours or an extended period of time, the student's not doing well, they already have the authority to act, to contact EMS or to take emergency measures.
My point is, if they don't know that it's really an emergency, because they're not, that within a time frame, say within 3 hours, the next step that we will take at the school level, if they don't know it's an emergency, if they're not health trained, they don't know it's an emergency. So they would, in that regard, go, okay, we can't reach the parent, we don't know what to do with the child, but they're still a little off, but can we call EMS just to be on the safe side? Because I don't know one here wants that ever to happen to another student. And I'm just thinking that it would
any of
be
our
beneficial.
employees, well, I would just say that any of our employees are already empowered to call EMS if there's a concern for the health or safety of a student.
Correct. I guess I'm not explaining this. I know they are, but if they don't know that things may be in a different stage, does that make sense?
Well, I guess my recommendation would be, because every situation could be different, depending on the condition of the child, the age of the child, their ability to communicate, all of these different things, it would probably be difficult to put that into policy. So my recommendation would be to emphasize in training what the current state of the law is, and that our staff are encouraged, empowered to take action if there's any concern about the child. And we handle that through training more so than trying to craft a policy for a bunch of different kinds of situations.
So I think what you're saying is maybe we want to have a little bit of a disclaimer there to say, in an emergency situation, school personnel should call EMS or take other actions as deemed necessary at the time, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I'm not saying make a whole new policy of it, just something in there so that it would fall back to possibly saving life.
Would that be more protocol than policy? What I'm saying,
Right.
I think, so with that, and looking at the situation that you're talking about, so Ms. Wade, in making sure that we have people trained to be backups, so we've got double redundancies to make sure that their health room is always covered, so, you know, with those things. So I think we can work in conjunction with the health department to make sure those health aides who are their employees, so have the necessary training that they need, so. Yes, sir.
If I may, I think Mr. Lott just had the the answer to your concern, that whether it's on policy 5.41, maybe we add in a number 4 at the bottom there that says, school personnel are authorized to contact EMS.
I had done that.
Okay.
But I want to be sure, I want to be sure you're okay with that, Counselor, because I don't want to.
I am. And that's a good reminder that we could then drive the training, because it's right there in policy.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a stupid, and this may absolutely sound stupid, and only because I just don't know any better. Ignorance on my part. I get that if it's not my kid, I have no business being there. There's no reason for me to record a parent-staff meeting. Why is there a problem with if the parent comes in and says, I'd like to record this so that I don't get lost, because most parents aren't in the education business. Why do we care if they record the meeting with the teacher? To me, it protects everybody.
So then they put it all over social media, and they only take a little piece of it out that may.
Well, I get that. I get that, but that's the world.
So,
I'm just saying. And I like the fact in there it does say, like if you do have a parent that has some language barriers and all that,
Yeah,
it can be off. There's excuses for it.
But
I just
would
was
say
clueless
this,
as to.
Just like we have at the opt-out at the back of the student code of conduct, the same thing applies to our staff.
Okay.
Don't take a picture of me when I don't know it or don't agree to it. I mean.
Okay.
And if I may.
Yeah.
Lots of times discussions will come up involving interactions with another student, and there's a privacy concern.
Okay. I get that.
There, so.
I get that. Nice. I am no longer ignorant to the question.
All right, so I'd entertain a motion to advertise.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded that we advertise
Policies.
the policies. I won't list as printed. Not all of them. So is there any further discussion on the list of policies as printed to go to advertisement? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Locke. Feet ought to be tired. Item I, any addition or correction to the minutes?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody had time to review the minutes?
Yes.
Entertain a motion to file minutes as printed.
Make a motion to file the minutes as printed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as printed. There's no discussion. So, all approved, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. We've made it to J, the consent agenda. It's a rather lengthy agenda this meeting as we go into summer. I'll start on the other end. Mr. Asbill, you're first today.
Hey, number one is always number one. I really don't have anything. There's lots of changes going on. There's always changes this time of year. There's lots of renewals and non-renewals, those kind of things. So I don't really have any questions. It's all fairly self-explanatory. It looks like we are moving forward as we should be. So I don't have any comments at this time.
Ms. Wolf?
My questions were answered from Mr. Howard, and only one question I didn't get to ask on the contract between UF and the athletic. Did that contract price increase, or was that the same from last year? That's the one thing I forgot to ask.
Ms. Lake.
Increased by 8%.
That's how does that sit with you?
Well, they said 1920, when COVID hit, they only charged us half a year, obviously, so we got cost recovered here. They stayed flat on 2021, or went up, I think 2% was marginal, and then as I expected. But when you have the only game in town, I mean, that's it. And there's such a benefit that I don't have to tell the board
I
to
understand the
do this.
benefit, I just didn't.
And the 8% was like $8,000, so at the end of the day, it wasn't a alarming.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brookins?
Mr. Cowart's answers all my questions. I'm sad to see some of our teachers leave, move, change in certain schools, but I certainly wish them always the best. So, thank you.
I don't have much, just a couple of comments. The principals look like they're fixing to have job fairs, and it's that time of year where musical chairs happen. Some of it's good, you know. Mr. Asbell, we produced more leadership in Williston again. We got another transfer from Williston over to the district office, Ms. Lauren Whitehurst. Just bumping it in over here to help make the whole county better.
We're trying to even it out. All this Bronson is a little top heavy, so we had to, Bronson needs good support people.
I do that for just good fun, Mr. Step up the competition.
I appreciate it.
That's the only thing I had. I'll entertain a motion for this consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. We are down to, I'm sorry, I'm not the chair here lately, and we just changed the way our agenda format is. Are we down to board superintendent's comments?
Yeah. So I'll keep it brief. So we all know that we have students that are down in Orlando at FFA, and we anxiously await some results. So as they're competing or our finalists, and just appreciate, you know, this might be the thickest agenda that we've had. So I hope it's representative of the hard work that district staff has brought to you tonight, whether it's new innovative things with transportation and trying to go through that, or just bring in a renewal of a contract. So there's a lot of things that are moving pieces that are going on right now. We do have a lot of people moving, but we're also hiring a lot of people right now. So, and I feel like we've got some good people. I'm excited about having some homegrown people that are coming into positions of leadership, and that's a really, really nice thing. And you look at tonight being able to celebrate a tragedy in Yankeetown, and I can't say enough or shout it enough, the professionalism and training and how that kicked in, and I'm thankful for that. So, and I think it's even more evident as we see other tragedies that happen, whether it's on our campus or whatnot, to be able to for us to learn and put safeguards in place to keep our students safe and secure. And that is the utmost priority. Appreciated the opportunity last week to have some time with our new education commissioner, Commissioner Diaz, who's rolling out of the Senate. He came and spoke to the superintendents, so, and I'm looking forward to his leadership, looking forward to the opportunity to work with him, get him here into our NEFAC districts, and hopefully at some point in time get him here to Levy to come and visit. We'll remind you that next month, on the 27th at 5, we have our board docs training. So if you can be here for that 5 o'clock, so I appreciate it. So we know we've moved that meeting from Tuesday to Monday, and I appreciate board you doing that so I could get to a training on Tuesday. And the last thing, I want to just keep it on your that Thursday, the July 21st is our ribbon cutting at Chiefville Middle High School. So it'll be after our board meeting. So, and with that, so that's all I have, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just in an abundance of caution, because of the way the new board docs format, there is a separate consent agenda for finance items, K1 and then K2. I'd recommend that we, at least for the purposes of the minutes, that we address that.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the budget amendment and chief's amendment. Those are important items.
K1, because we did the consent, I'm looking at it, I'm trying to, why is it different than ever before?
Oh, there was J.
The rest of the consent agenda was J.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I skipped over. But backing up, if we can We missed item K, which is the consent agenda finance items, which is the budget amendments. I would entertain a motion.
I make the motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda under finance items, letter K. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Councilor. Time for board comments. I'm going to start on this end.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one ain't number one anymore.
Summertime, there's a lot to do, there's a lot going on. I see people working all the time, sometimes even harder. It just seems like summertime, there's so much activity. And this week we went to Tampa for the school board conference. I so love the networking and mixing with other counties and the things that you learn and the conversations, just, you know, comparing things. And it's always an education to me every single time, even if I've been there a million times, because you always learn something different. And I think that was great. So it's a highlight. It's hard getting away, but I do appreciate the time away and the opportunity to learn more. That's all I have. Thank you.
Conference was great. I echo Ms. Brookins. Learned a lot every time you go. Absolutely learn a lot. The summer program and I think the school program are going great in Cedar Key right now. I think the kids are ready to challenge some other people in ping pong after their ELA work. And just thank you to the teachers who take the time out to come back and teach our kids during the summertime. You know, they don't have to do that, and it's their summer too, but they come back and continue to work really hard with our kids due to the past couple of years and the situation we're in. We're bringing our kids back up to speed, and that's most important, get them where they need to be. So I appreciate that and all the work of admin as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Aswell.
Thank you, Mr. Etheridge.
Saving the best for last.
That's why you're last. I want to take a moment to thank the administrators that are here tonight. A lot of times y'all aren't able to be here, and I know everybody else does, but I want to say I appreciate your input on these things, and helps us making decisions because you're out there, we're not. So I appreciate that. The other thing, Ms. Hires, how's our hiring coming? Filling holes? Where are we at?
Our administrators are working very hard to get that done. So they're working weekends, night and day, interviewing. We've had people call from out of state, Colorado, Ohio, from all over. So it's a work in progress.
But I know we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. I also want to thank each and everyone who's reached out to me and expressed their concern about my son and their prayers for my son. Next week we go for his surgery and we'll get back to normal life after that. It got moved up, which is a good thing. We'll have all summer to recover and we're going to be back up and running. I also forgot to mention Max just got back from the best trip a kid can go on. And Max being the biggest kid of them all. How many have you gone on?
About 18.
And I enjoyed seeing the pictures and how cool it is. And if any kid is out there and needs somebody to go along with them, I'm available because I thought it was cool. But I'm riding with Max next time.
That's what Cheryl Beecher said.
I'm riding with Max. I don't mind riding in the back, brother. So that's probably where I should be. And now, Mr. Chairman, I defer to you. It's best for last.
Yeah, I hear you. No, it's kind of been at the school in town and around the past few weeks, and you know, it just never stops. Y'all just keep going and going. I was thinking you're still doing it. The kids just aren't there. And then I think I saw Mr. Slimp said the other day, I mean, the last day of school, we already miss you. I'm like, what do you mean you miss me? It's time for a break. But I say it all the time, but it's amazing to me that it all happens. I mean, there's so many moving parts, Breezy and the maintenance department. I mean, and then just the hiring process of all of what it takes to make it happen, and then watch people step up and do miraculous things like we were honored tonight. And it amazes me. I thought about this earlier when you said administrators, because, you know, we're fortunate in Levy County to live in a pretty unique place, but you as administrators and leaders, you know, this is what makes our little towns go round. That all goes around our schools. And if our schools don't go right, then our communities doesn't go right. So that's why some people get passionate about it, including myself sometimes, but that's why it's important, because it's what drives our communities. And I want to say thanks. Don't want to miss out. This is, I'm an old FFA guy, or a lot of us are, but it's FFA week convention in Orlando, and we got a lot of good Levy County students down there. And as I was looking through today, a lot of them already hit the top fours, and they'll be competing for the rest of the week. And I know I saw some Chiefland kids, and then of course Tory Mills, and then our middle school par pro team plays top 4 and compete in the final 4 tomorrow about 1:30.
And you got a proud dad that's going to go down and see
I saw that
on Thursday. So.
Yeah. And I think so. I mean, you can watch most of the convention live if you want to click on. We're fortunate now that our new assistant principal at the middle high school is coaching our parliamentary procedure team, and along with Ms. Cooley. So that's all I have. And I do want to say this, because I don't think we've had a meeting since graduation, but I think graduation on the football field at Wilson High School the other night is about as good as we've ever had.
It really
and there was a
was.
lot of good hard work that went into making that happen. Jonathan Lewis and Brett and a lot of people who worked, Scarlett and Schlimp, and I just showed up. But anyway, didn't want it to go unnoticed. It was a nice evening. Is there any other item of business to come before the board? If not, meeting adjourned.